And what was the message that the army was trying to send by getting the Prime Minister to come to the square on Friday after Friday prayers?
Well, first of all, it was a short speech, but to the point. And I think Assam Sharaf really tried to speak as one of the protesters. This was not someone from a different world coming to speak to them, but one of their own. And I think he really tried to capture that. As for the military, what they're trying to do right now is send a clear message that they are listening to the protesters, that they are trying to understand their demands and implement them. And one of the big demands the last week has been that Ahmed Shafik, the former prime minister, resign. And the military listened. And now they appointed someone who's on the right side of the revolution, not on the wrong side, the former regime element. So that's an important shift right there.
Shadi, before we go off air, let's just cross over to events now in Libya. These are live pictures coming in from Benghazi. So what we're seeing here are people mulling around on the streets. On the left of your screen is the feed we're getting here at AlJazeera of just thousands of people on the streets of Benghazi coming out. But and on the right of the screen, we're seeing what Libyan state TV wants us to see, perhaps a more kind of somber, sober note. Shadi, talk us through the differences there, what we're seeing.
Well, these are two very different images that we're seeing in this. We're talking about two different narratives, and even when we hear Gaddafi and his son Saif speak about what's going on, it sounds like they're on a different planet from what we're actually seeing on the ground in Benghazi and other places where people are on the streets and they're saying enough is enough. So it's just remarkable that there is one set of facts on the ground, but different people are interpreting them in completely different ways.
Okay, Shadi, thank you very much indeed. Well, that's it from me for now. Stay with Al Jazeera's extended coverage of demonstrations throughout the Arab world. Adrian Finnegan will be here with the very latest in just a few minutes. Stay tuned to Al Jazeera. Thanks for watching.
Afghanistan is faced with a huge challenge.
Relations have gone really sour between us and our allies.
We have inflicted considerable damage on the enemy.
The people who make international headlines.
Ultimately, the truth will out.
They want to stop this publication of information that embarrasses them.
Make time for Sir David Frost. Frost over the world. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Rhythms of resistance.
A part of the struggle and popular resistance is art. Through my art, I resist. Resistance is my art, and my art is my war.
Musicians using music as a way to maintain their cultural identity.
I believe that when I sing to the world, I portray Palestine through my voice, my singing, and my songs.
Songs from the lost homeland. At this time, on Al Jazeera.
A history of guerrilla warfare. A place on the global stage. They were an organization created for a stateless population. But before fighting for their land, why did the PLO fight for independence from their Arab neighbors? Chronicling the turbulent story of the struggle for a Palestinian homeland. PLO, History of a Revolution, at this time on Al Jazeera.
The relocation of the Ahmadiyya has magnified the issue of religious intolerance in Indonesia. Is this inevitable in a multicultural society? And is the government turning a blind eye?
101 East at this time on Al Jazeera.
A debilitating condition afflicting millions of women across the developing world.
Sometimes it is not possible to cure a patient with fistula. We have to prepare her psychologically.
Revealing the human stories behind fistula and its intimate connection to poverty. A powerful new series exploring global maternal health. Birthrights, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Friday prayers across the Arab world are being accompanied by more protests, including in Egypt. And in Baghdad, Iraqis calling for improved services, better pay, and an end to corruption. Hello, this is Al Jazeera in Doha. I'm Adrian Finnegan. Calls for change too in Libya, where the uprising goes on. Libyan protesters regroup as pro-Gaddafi forces launch a new air raid in the east. The scramble to leave Libya, the plight of migrant workers who want to go home but are stuck without any help from their governments. Meanwhile, the US president has stepped up pressure on Colonel Gaddafi.
Muammar Gaddafi has lost legitimacy to lead, and he must leave.
And in other news, China announces a big boost in military spending to more than $91 billion this year. Egyptians are gathering in Cairo's Tahrir Square to call for constitutional change from the government. Egypt's new Prime Minister, Essam Sharaf, has been addressing the crowd alongside a senior member of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Prime Minister told the crowd that he will do all he can to realize their demands.
You have achieved a great task, and the bigger objective is to rebuild Egypt. I'm praying to God that I would see Egypt a free country where opinion is not captured in prison cells, and see that the security of the citizen is a top priority. I pray to God that may Almighty God has honored me with more than I have asked for, and I pray to God to help me be able to deserve this position. Please raise your head up. You are an Egyptian.
We'll take you live to Cairo in just a few moments, but first, anti-government demonstrators are also gathering across Iraq. Hundreds of people have converged in Baghdad to call for improved services, better pay, and an end to corruption. Many had to walk for miles to get to the capital's Tahrir Square. The government banned car access to try to crack down on numbers attending the rally. Our correspondent Jane Arif is there.
Thousands of people have walked for hours to come to this square. They're walking around the circle and ending up at the foot of this bridge where the riot police are. Now, these police are here to prevent protesters from going further, and they have taken the unprecedented step of putting concrete blocks at the foot of the bridge. This entire city overnight has been transformed into a fortress. The green zone sealed off, concrete placed around major buildings, and people told they can only walk. Despite that, thousands of people have come to chant that they believe that the government they elected are liars, and they demand better.
Jane Arif in Baghdad. Let's take Cairo's Tahrir Square. Within the last hour, the new Prime Minister, Essam Sharaf, has addressed the crowd. On the line now is our Egypt correspondent, Ayman Mokhyldeen. And we can't underestimate the when the Prime Minister addressed that crowd, Ayman.
Well, you know, it's very symbolic, Adrian, on many levels. In fact, if you start out by looking at just the fact that an Egyptian Prime Minister forced to the street to address the crowd from which he himself says he's drawing his legitimate power is really impressive. You know, this is a country for years